This week in the business of tech, Microsoft Office is being phased out, a key metaverse signal showing which tech will emerge victorious, the perils of zero trust saturation, the rise of the vertical SaaS company, the overwhelming rise of apps in business, and tech regulation momentum slows as the midterms near. All these stories and more. Hit those like, subscribe, and the notification button and help us pay the bills. And here are this week's stories. Pour one out for Microsoft Office. It's being phased out. Not the products, of course, but the brand. Microsoft Office is being renamed to Microsoft 365. The apps will be part of Microsoft 365 rather than Microsoft Office, and Office.com, the Office mobile app, and the Office app for Windows will be the Microsoft 365 app. It's not entirely gone yet. Office bundles will still be called that for now, although they are a legacy brand. The changes start next month. Why do we care? This is actually quite a big deal. The productivity space is hot, the work layer is where the interest is for both software companies and for IT services companies, and Microsoft's commitment here is obvious. Put your major brand, Microsoft itself, behind this core set of technologies. That's your strategic takeaway. They're leaning into their primary brand, and the idea is to associate the Microsoft name to those core applications, which are now even more important than their Windows business from a positioning perspective. Office is a very, very well-known brand, and the Office 365 branding, or 365 branding, a lot less so. Time will tell if this is the smart play. I'll admit skepticism and say I think this is wasting a core marketing asset, but they both didn't ask me, and it's a lot less important than understanding their priorities. While I'm on marketing, let's talk about Cybersecurity Awareness Month. You may have noticed I haven't done anything at all about this. That's intentional. I cover the story anyway, so I didn't need more. That said, Axios Market said what I was thinking, that the marketing efforts could drown out the educational impact of the messaging. The core premise of the month, the idea is that every October, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and the National Cybersecurity Alliance host Cybersecurity Awareness Month to educate individuals about basic cyber hygiene practices and encourage security professionals to reevaluate their organization's cyber strategies. Sales pitches have now become linked to that, plugging products as part of the messaging. Multiple companies have done it, and Axios even quotes IT management software company Kaseya published a blog post right before the month started titled How to Win More Business During Cybersecurity Awareness Month. The piece quotes some experts saying there is certainly space to break through the noise and, quote, consultants who advise companies to establish their own cyber awareness and training programs say having a dedicated month-long campaign actually does help. This includes C-level execs more inclined to lead efforts and organizations investing. So I'll also observe that Gartner has coverage in CRN on their new report that spending on cybersecurity is expected to remain robust in 2023 despite fears of a downturn. They estimate that security spending will rise by 11.3% in 2023 compared to the 7.2% increase this year. Why do we care? It would be really easy to jump on the Kaseya bandwagon here, and I'm self-aware enough to note that this piece got further attention by their mention. However, there's two reasons to care. First, let's observe that the entire services space takes the heat for that headline, and second, that major outlets like Axios are watching the IT services space now because of Kaseya, and not because they made headlines for good reasons. That breach resonates. I've been pushing back on cybersecurity opportunism because it's gross, but it's also damaging. If everything becomes a sales pitch, customers will tune it out. Your takeaways are twofold. First, be aware of how your messaging comes across and avoid that "here's a scary thing, so buy my product" approach. And second, push back on vendors making education less effective who do that same thing. Tech professionals are in demand. 78% of organizations across all industries plan to increase their cybersecurity spending over the next year. 73% of IT industry leaders expect to struggle to recruit data scientists or fill other open tech positions. Nearly 3/4 of U.S. IT workers are interested in leaving their job in the next year due to toxic work environments and a lack of upward mobility and job flexibility. And globally, less than 1/3 of IT employees intend to stay with their current employer. This is all from the new ConnectWise study data. And according to Robert Half's 2023 salary guide, business leaders remain focused on expanding, accelerating, and protecting their IT investments over the next 12 months, despite many companies preparing to feel the squeeze of an economic downturn. 79% of chief information officers and chief technology officers report feeling very confident about their company's growth prospects in the year ahead, citing efficiency and productivity, 31%, computing initiatives, 26%, digital transformation, 24%, and blockchain and Internet of Things projects as their top strategic priorities for 2023. This amidst other calls among big tech companies of the Great Hesitation, cutting costs and expenses in anticipation of a recession. Why do we care? I'm intrigued by this sense of impending staffing doom from big tech versus the reality of most technology companies struggling to find staff. Don't let the lousy business planning of a few companies send the wrong message. Facebook's struggles or Amazon's hiring strategies are not what to keep an eye on. Instead, let's focus on the majority of IT professionals still in demand. That's good for individual pros, it's good for the demand side of IT services and IT outsourcing, and intense pressure to keep staff for the services companies themselves. And that's why we care. Ignore the noise of a select few. Let's do some emerging tech, more on the metaverse. Reports around Microsoft's augmented reality HoloLens goggles being tested by the US Army have been seen by Bloomberg and Insider, and it's not great. Quoting The Verge, soldiers testing the headsets have complained about their mission-affecting physical impairments and say that wearing the goggles can cause headaches, nausea, and eye strain. Acceptance of the tech remains low, says a summary prepared for Army and Defense Department officials and seen by Bloomberg, with soldiers complaining that the headsets don't, quote, contribute to their ability to complete their mission. One testimony reported by Insider was even blunter. Quote, the devices would gotten us killed, said the tester, referring to the light emitted by the goggles' heads-up display, which could alert enemy troops to the wearer's presence. TechCrunch covered Google expanding its Project Starline tests. What's Starline? That's a video calling booth that uses 3D imagery, high-resolution cameras, custom depth sensors, and a breakthrough light field display to create a lifelike experience for callers on both sides of the screen, all without a required headset. They're expanding the trials in some of their enterprise partners, including Salesforce, WeWork, T-Mobile, and Hackensack Meridian Health, with installations later this year. Why do we care? This is about comparing two approaches around augmented or virtual reality. Here's my take. Headsets strapped to your face cause physical issues. That's not just Microsoft, but Meta too. And it's a sizable percentage of users who literally get sick using the tech. This is the main reason I'm not keen on this technology. On the other hand, projections or holograms are far more interesting. Google's technology is viable and getting very positive reviews. Sure, it's a long way off, but that's not to say we won't be watching. The reason to care is that these are long-term bets to watch. But as we see with Google, actual trials are happening that may prove fruitful, despite the trials by Microsoft that seem a lot less so. Let's talk Zero Trust. Protocol examining how it's a heavily overused term. Let's quote from the article. Depending on who you ask, Zero Trust is an architecture, a strategy, a goal, or probably all of the above. The concept of Zero Trust first gained momentum at Google in the wake of the 2009 Aurora attacks attributed to the Chinese government hackers, which included the theft of source code from the company. As a security term, Zero Trust was popularized starting in 2010 by a Forrester analyst. Continuing, Alex Weinert, Vice President and Director of Identity Security at Microsoft, has a favorite quote on Zero Trust. He said during a recent online panel hosted by Protocol. Weinert once asked a Chief Information Security Officer to define Zero Trust, and the answer he received was, "It means whatever the person on the other side of the table is trying to sell." Less flippantly, Zero Trust can be seen as an organizing principle for how to stop modern cyber attacks. Today, attackers tend to follow a certain trajectory. After gaining initial access to an environment, they move around on the network, take over additional accounts, and elevate their account privileges to let them take additional, more damaging actions. And finally, this quote. Some security product categories are overtly associated with Zero Trust, such as a Zero Trust Network Access, which is a VPN replacement that's built around Zero Trust principles. For instance, Zero Trust Network Access tools can use additional data sources to verify a user beyond just their credentials, such as their location or the security posture of their device. But deploying that particular technology doesn't single-handedly achieve Zero Trust. And given the fact that Zero Trust does incorporate a variety of different technologies, that's led a number of cybersecurity vendors to take some liberties with the term. Why do we care? I wanted to highlight this article due to the critical insight. Every vendor wants to be Zero Trust, but none of them are in isolation. If Zero Trust is an architecture, a strategy, a goal, or a combination, they all require the services to install and configure them. This should be lots of good news. The desired outcome and the path are via services. Here's the rub. Suppose vendors oversaturate the market with messaging and those liberties with the messaging, and customers end up disappointed. In that case, they're likely to blame both the vendor and the implementer. Set expectations realistically and then deliver, and push back on the vendor nonsense. I bet you think working with Cisco is hard. They're big and have so much going on, and you're smaller. That's why there's Cisco Partner Journeys, an innovative new digital experience designed to accelerate your engagement with Cisco. Each unique journey leads you to the best tools, services, programs, and portfolio offerings to help you accelerate sales, build a practice, and enhance profitability. Whether you are new to Cisco or a longtime partner, Cisco has the right journey for you. Interested? Visit CiscoPartnerJourneys.com to find out more. Let's get in some other Microsoft data released recently, a conversation about the reinvigoration of the PC. Microsoft Windows chief Panos Panay cited some numbers to Axios. More people are using Windows than ever, a 20% monthly increase versus pre-pandemic. More time spent on Windows PCs. On average, people spend 10% more time on each PC than pre-pandemic. Customer satisfaction for Windows 11 is higher than any previous version of Windows. The piece says what I often do, so let's quote the article. Who makes the computer and its operating system has become less critical for many workers, students, and consumers, with most key apps running in the browser and from the cloud or being available across Macs and PCs. Windows still dominates the market for PC operating systems, but Apple has gained significant ground. Beyond grabbing a larger slice of the consumer market, Macs are now either standard or an option at many startups and a growing number of large companies. Google's Chrome OS has also become a significant player, especially in education. Now, I'll note that Q3 PC shipments plunged per data from Canalys. They're down 18%. Why do we care? There's a hidden element within the article. the services customers use. Microsoft relies on its ability to play well with others. Windows is still a massive business for Microsoft. It's just important to note that they have to remind us of that. Why? Because the computer and operating system are less critical and becoming even less so. I'll continue to drive this message. If your core offering is about managing endpoints, those computers and operating systems as the focus, you too are becoming less critical. It may be a slow march to irrelevance, but at any speed, it's dangerous. Gartner with a bunch of new predictions. First, there are 10 new tech trends to watch in 2023. There are 3 themes: optimize, scale, and pioneer, where technologies can help organizations maximize resilience, operations, or trust, scale vertical solutions and product delivery, and pioneer with new forms of engagement, accelerated responses, or opportunity. 3 I want to focus on. First, the digital immune system. In a digital immune system, data-driven insight helps improve operations, automate incident resolution, and increase the stability of systems. Second, applied observability. This strategy lets companies take observable artifacts like logs, traces, or API calls and take an integrated approach to accelerate decision-making. And industry cloud platforms. A mix of SaaS, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service will equip companies with industry-specific sets of modular capabilities to support the use cases needed by specific industry businesses. For years, providers have sought to address industry-specific needs from Microsoft to AWS. These platforms will accelerate, with Gartner predicting that half of the enterprises will use industry cloud platforms by 2027. This all comes from the Gartner IT Symposium/Expo this week, where other data points included a global Gartner CIO survey showing that organizations that lead in digital expect 3 times more growth, and that 79% of all workers see technology as essential to their jobs. In comparison, 75% see improving their digital skills as critical to business success. And helpful. Workers satisfied with their enterprise IT job applications are twice as inclined to stay in their organizations, significantly impacting retention. Gartner predicts that by 2025, 50% of IT organizations will have an established digital employee experience strategy, team, and management tool, a significant increase from 5% in 2021. IT budgets are projected to increase by an average of 5.1% in 2023, lagging behind a projected 6.5% global inflation rate. This is from another Gartner report released Monday. And enterprise IT spending is projected to reach $4.6 trillion worldwide in 2023, a year-over-year increase of 5.1%, according to a Gartner report released Wednesday. Spending on software will get the biggest bump, with Gartner forecasting an 11.3% increase in 2023. Spending on PCs and other devices is predicted to decline by just over half a percentage point year over year. Why do we care? Well, there's a lot to unpack. In the near term, investments in tech keep workers, and those budgets will increase, and the spending looks to be more in software than hardware. Got it. Longer term, the tech to consider is observability over management. I'm increasingly skeptical of manage all the things vendors, who both can't actually manage all the things, and intend that message to mean all the endpoints. And I see yesterday's stories about that being less relevant. I'm looking at you, RMM. I'm also keen on the increasingly industry-specific nature of technology, but more on that next. While considering those industry platforms, here's some coverage of the rise of vertical-focused SaaS companies from Protocol, quoting the piece. Vertical SaaS companies have often been overlooked by investors because an industry-specific focus was viewed as limiting by venture capitalists obsessed with growth. Quote, the orthodoxy at that time was you draw a box around a category of software and then you do really well in that category. And then you go try to sell it to as many customers as you can, said Vi Kudassian, co-founder of Service Titan, which builds software for plumbers, electricians, and other trade businesses. Now vendors such as Salesforce, Microsoft, and Google are following suit. All three cloud giants have launched industry-focused cloud products in areas such as healthcare, manufacturing, or financial services. I think that's very telling, says ServiceTitan's Gazillion. To me, it's actually reinforced the broader thesis that the future is vertical. Why do we care? Well, it's always wise to be skeptical of those promoting their own plans. We'll observe a critical observation about those investors' premise of vertical-focused companies. Their so-called disqualifying feature to overlook the space is growing. Their definition of growth and my definition of growth are vastly different. Those investors have ideas for growth that can be mind-numbing for most IT services organizations and, frankly, is not relevant. Instead, note that there are software companies increasingly focused on verticals, and the cloud players, desperate for any growth, are tapping into that. The future is vertical, and for IT services companies, it's the real value they deliver. Helping in the line of business application with specific knowledge is the top value and a recurring theme among the most successful. As I've observed, it's how I'd start a provider today, so it's safe to believe competitors would start up this way too. And it will be SaaS driven. New data from Okta. Companies with more than 2,000 people unleash an average of 187 apps on their workforce. This includes apps like Zoom, Slack, Notion, Airtable, Monday.com, DocuSign, and more. What does this result in? According to research published in the Harvard Business Review, workers are toggling from app to app, website to website nearly 1,200 times a day, or 9% of their annual time at work. Complaints about apps increased 32% in 2021, and an average of 76 employees quit per year because they're so vexed by the tech. Why do we care? Well, this is undoubtedly a bigger business story. There's an obvious lesson here for all. Too much technology is not necessarily good, and more apps isn't the optimal answer. When I cite that helping in the business layer is the highest value, well, this is an example of why. Are those apps overlapping? Can a business do more with less? Are you maximizing the ones you have rather than adding more? Helping businesses with this complexity is why there's value. And in sobering news, Bloomberg economists have come out with the latest version of their model for recession prediction, and the latest run puts the odds of a recession at 100% in the next 12 months. The last time this was run, the model was at 65% in the next 12 months. Why do we care? Not to be a bummer before the weekend, so let's look at the bright side. While this isn't a 100% guarantee that recession is coming, from a planning perspective, there's simply an advantage in assuming it's coming and moving beyond that. As my colleague Carl Polachuk is fond of saying, you are an economy of one. Remove the uncertainty, know that within 12 months there will be a recession, and execute your plan. Government gets things done, and it does it at the pace of deliberation. I want to share a few updates. Axios dove into the pace of tech regulation as the midterms approach, updating on 3 major areas. On antitrust, most of the major bills have stalled, despite a bill on fees for large mergers passing in the House. On privacy, the American Data and Privacy Protection Act passed out of committee. Still, House Speaker Pelosi voiced reservations about it limiting her home state of California's privacy law, and it has not been taken up for a vote. The third, children's online safety, saw bills come out of committee in the Senate, but the House has no corresponding bill. The bottom line, COVID, the economy, climate, health, and tax spending all took priority. Representative John Katko from New York, ranking member of the House Homeland Security Committee, who is retiring later this year, shared his vision released this week detailing how the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency should grow through 2025. The plan lays out 6 tenets that CISA should focus on to grow, including maturing public sector cyber workforce training, aggressively growing cybersecurity capabilities, and continuing to build relationships across the federal government and private sector. And in an update to the National Cybersecurity Strategy, National Cyber Director Chris Inglis said Wednesday that the release is still pending, anywhere from a month or 2 or 3 to possibly further. The delay was partially credited to a flood of the federal government and private sector feedback. He said that the strategy will address regulation and market forces, the international dimension of digital security, as well as the assigning of roles and responsibility and how to actually get critical infrastructure into the right place. Why do we care? We'll be looking to see what happens in the next session of Congress, and those midterm elections matter to see what will be prioritized. Public service announcement: go out and vote. That said, there's practical work being done around how the strategy for cyber will play out, and I previously covered the call for feedback. The rollout now changes due specifically to hearing from the industry. Next year may turn out to be a significant one for tech and cybersecurity regulation.
Thanks for your time and attention. Time is a finite resource, and I really value you giving me some of yours. If you like this video, you can let me know with a like of the video, and even more valuable, hitting the subscription button. My content is all free, and I use metrics like subscriptions to pay the bills, so it has real value. The content here is produced under ethics guidelines posted at businessof.tech. If you're interested in more content like this, you can get access to content early via our Patreon at patreon.com/MSPradio. It's our give what you want model where you set the value of what you think the content is worth. If you like this podcast, you can catch it daily as the 5-minute news and commentary show, The Business of Tech, available on all your favorite podcatchers with links at businessof.tech. Just hit that big blue button to subscribe. Again, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen, and I really value the interaction. If you want to say something in the comments, I do respond and watch all that, and I look forward to talking to you next time.